Hi, thank you for joining me. I'm going to be telling the Faces of Easter story. It tells the story of Jesus' birth and his life and his death, and it's a great way to walk with Jesus this Holy Week. So thank you for joining me today. I'm going to begin by saying St. Teresa's Prayer. It's the way that I start almost every Godly Play story, every Godly Play class that I have. So it's just a way that I am able to help get myself ready to tell the story. May today there be peace within. May you trust God that you are exactly where you are meant to be. May you not forget the infinite possibilities that are born of faith. May you use the gifts that you have received and pass on the love that has been given to you. May you be content knowing that you are a child of God. Let this presence settle into your bones and allow your soul the freedom to sing, dance, praise, and love. It is there for each and every one of us. Amen. So I'm going to be rolling out the story, and when I finish with the story, I'll show you what it looks like, and we'll wonder a bit as well. In the beginning, the baby was born. God chose Mary to be the mother of God. Listen carefully. Listen to the words. God chose Mary to be the mother of God. And so the Word was born, a wordless child. When the baby looked into the Mother Mary's eyes, he could already see the cross. And when he looked into the Father Joseph's eyes, the cross was there too. The Mother Mary and the Father Joseph gave the baby everything that he needed. They held him close, they kept him warm, and he began to grow. The baby grew to be a boy. And when he was about 12 years old, he went with his mother and father and many of the other people from Nazareth to the great city of Jerusalem to keep one of the high holy days. After the celebrations were all over, Mary and Joseph headed back with many of the people from Nazareth, and they headed on the road towards home. But while they were on the road back home, they looked around and they realized that Jesus was not with them. They thought he had simply been playing with some of the other children from Nazareth, but he wasn't there. And so they hurried back to Jerusalem as quickly as they could, and they looked for him everywhere. They hurried down the dark and narrow streets. They went to the marketplace where they had gone to buy food. They went to the place where they had spent the night. They looked everywhere for him for 3 days and for 3 nights. They even looked in the temple. And there he was in the temple talking to the priests. And when he spoke, the priest listened because he knew so much. And when the priest spoke, Jesus listened because he wanted to learn more. When Mary and Joseph found Jesus, they asked him the question that is impossible for us to answer. When our parents ask, why did you do this? And Jesus said something strange. He said, "Didn't you know I would be in my Father's house?" Mary and Joseph did not understand. Their house was in Nazareth, where Joseph's carpenter shop was. They did not understand, but still, they did not forget. Jesus continued to grow, and he became a man. When he was about 30 years old, he went down to the River Jordan, where his cousin John was baptizing people. Do you see John? Here you can see just barely the back of his head. John was a wild man. Jesus waded into the water, the River Jordan, and he said to his cousin John, he said, "Baptize me." And John looked at Jesus as though he was looking at Jesus for the very, very first time. And he said, I cannot baptize you. You are the Messiah, the one we have been waiting for. It is you who should baptize me." And Jesus said, "No, it is written, you would come before me and prepare the way. Baptize me." And so Jesus went down into the dark chaos of the water. And when John pulled him back into the light, some of the people that were gathered there said that a dove flew down from heaven and came close to Jesus. Others who were gathered there said that they heard a voice say, "This is my son, with whom I am well pleased." After Jesus was baptized, he continued on across the River Jordan, and he went into the desert where he spent 40 days and 40 nights so that he could figure out who he was and what his work was going to be. Jesus spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. He wanted to figure out who he was and what his work was going to be. There was little to eat and little to drink. And while he was out there in the desert, a voice came to him and said, "Why don't you turn one of those stones over there into bread so you'll have something to eat?" But Jesus said, "Human beings must have more than bread to live." The voice came to him again, and all of a sudden it was as if he was standing on top of the temple in Jerusalem looking down. And the voice said to him, "If you are truly the Son of God, why don't you jump down from here and see if God will send his angels to catch you before you hit the stones below?" But Jesus said, "No, it is not right to test God." And the voice came to him again. And all of a sudden, it was as if he was looking at all of the kingdoms in all of the world. And the voice said, "If you follow me, I will make you king over all of these kingdoms." But Jesus said, "I know I'm to be a king, but not that kind of a king." The voice went away. Jesus left the desert and he began to do his work. But what was Jesus's work? His work was to come close to people. Look here, he is so close to this blind man that he is touching his eyes. When Jesus came close to people, they could see things they had never seen before. They could do things they had never done before. They became well. Jesus also told parables, and then he knew that he had to become a parable. And so he went to Jerusalem for the last time. Jesus rode into Jerusalem at a time when there were a lot of people from many different lands there. They were celebrating the time of Passover. And when he rode in, they thought that he was going to be king. But he did not ride in on a great white horse. He was not carried in by soldiers. He rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. And it was not even his own donkey. He had borrowed it. But still, the people waved palms as he came into the city of Jerusalem. And palms were a sign of kings. On Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday that week, he taught in the temple. And at night, he would go with the 12 to the Mount of Olives. People whispered about how there was going to be angels that would come down to push back the Roman soldiers. On Thursday, the temple guards agreed to take him. But then when they went to take him, they couldn't find him. Jesus and the 12 ran through the streets of Jerusalem quickly, And then they went into a house and climbed upstairs where they went into an upper room. And it was there that they shared their Last Supper together. After they had had everything that they wanted to eat, Jesus took some bread. He gave thanks to God. And then he said something like this: "Whenever you break bread and share it like this, I will be there." And then he took the cup of wine. And he said, "Whenever you take a cup of wine and share it like this, I will be there." Then Judas got up from the table and left. And Jesus went on his own to pray. And after he finished praying, he went to join the 12. Judas greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, and that was a sign for the temple guards to take him. Jesus disappeared into the darkness, and the 12 disappeared into the night as well. That night was a confusing one. The next day, they took Jesus outside the walls of Jerusalem, and they crucified him. That afternoon, he died. The skies grew dark. They took his body down from the cross, and they buried him in a cave. They rolled a stone in front of the opening to the cave to close it like a door. On Saturday, it was so quiet. It was as if you could hear the earth breathing. It was the women who had the courage to go to the cave that day. They wanted to just be close to him. They wanted to remember their times with him, even if it was sad. But when they got to the tomb, the stone had been rolled away. Jesus was no longer there. He had died on the cross, but somehow it was as though he was still with them, just as he is still with us today, in the bread and in the wine. You see, you can't have this side without this side. And you can't have this side without this side. There was no way to separate them. And that is the mystery of Easter. That is what makes all of the difference. So I'm going to show you what the story looks like in a line. I'm going to pause the movie for a second and show you what it looks like from Jesus' birth all the way to his death. And we're going to look at that. Okay, so that's where I was sitting over there on that little mat, and I've been laying out each of these faces of Easter in a line. We have Jesus as a baby, Jesus as a 12-year-old boy in the temple, Jesus getting baptized, Jesus in the desert, Jesus coming close to people, Jesus at the Last Supper. And then we have Jesus being crucified. But remember, we can't have this side without this side. And so that is why the color changes to white, the color of pure celebration. Now, when we look at the story like this, it's easy to see. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. But if we look at this last picture and we look at the other side, we have an ending that's kind of like a beginning. So let's see if there's something I can do about this. Okay, how about this? Now the story can go on forever.